The SEC's national championship drought in men's basketball is finished. The Gators are back on top, chomping up Houston in the second half of Monday's national championship game with yet another comeback. 4 second half comeback victories for Florida in this tournament. And the best team from the best conference in basketball this year won the national championship. We will get into that, and also a debate of whether the college football playoff could ever be as good as March Madness. We will get into that as well today on the pod. Welcome into this edition of SEC Football Unfiltered, a podcast from the USA Today Network. I'm Blake Toppmeyer alongside John Adams. John, I want to discuss the broader scope of the college football playoff postseason and how is there any hope for it ever becoming sort of the thrilling event that March Madness is almost every year. But first, let's start with the events of Monday. Florida winning the national championship, led for just barely more than 1 minute in that game. Houston really led for only a wire, but as we've seen so many times in this tournament, Florida primed for that second half rally. Wasn't a great game for Walter Clayton, but he did warm up in the final minutes, made the defensive stop at the close. Thoughts on what this tournament from the SEC and in particular the champion Gators?
Yeah, Florida. I really don't want to hear national champions one anymore, though. That got old real fast. Okay, we get it. Okay, they chomp in their champions. We get it. Yeah, it was typical Florida. You go back to the UConn game. You go back to the Texas Tech game. That the other team was outplaying them, and the other team looked in control of the game. Sometimes you can be watching a game and some team has the upper hand and you think, yeah, they got the upper hand, but you can see where this is going. No, with those teams against Florida, they look like they're the better team right now, and what they're doing to Florida is working, and I don't know what the answer is. And then Florida, here comes Florida. I mean, what a great clutch team this was. I mean, it won 3 very, very tough games. And against Houston, I thought Houston was getting better as the tournament went along. I mean, it manhandled Tennessee after a tough call with Purdue. It goes out and manhandles Tennessee, just asserts its superiority right away and just puts a tight grip on the game. There was no comeback, and just a slight hint of one early. And then it goes against Duke and it's down, but that charge against Duke just took the life out of the Blue Devils and its defense. And then you follow up with that start against Florida, and it just – so I thought it was a great game, and Florida is certainly a great team with a lot of depth. And think about it, Florida – you go back to those championships Billy Donovan won back-to-back, and it looked like a great team, not just a national champion, but a great team. And you really saw that with this Florida team in the clutch, its greatness and versatility and how it could just overcome anything.
Yeah, there was a time, John, as you well remember, when Florida was the gold standard for athletic departments. When Jeremy Foley was the AD, Florida had a run of the basketball success that you mentioned, won 2 national championships with Urban Meyer. Its Olympic sports were, in total, really the best in the country. I mean, it was the beacon for athletic departments, and Jeremy Foley, for a lot of ADs, was the guy that other ADs looked up to. Florida was really sort of off in the weeds for several years here, not only in basketball, but also in football. Football is still a work in progress, but basketball is back. And it, I think it breathed some life back into the Gators too. Really, as I said, I mean, at their best, they can be one of the premier athletic departments in the SEC, not only in the SEC but the country. And Olympic sports are still strong at Florida. But when your two pillars, when football and men's basketball are down at the same time, That I think that's tough on the optics for your athletic department. But it seems as if Florida has one of those solved. Certainly had it solved this year in Todd Golden's third season with a great cast of veteran guards in that starting lineup with Walter Clayton and Will Richard and Elijah Martin, senior guards, transfer guys. Clayton started his career as a 0-star recruit at Iona. Elijah Martin started his career as a 0-star recruit at Florida Atlantic, took Florida Atlantic to a Final Four, and then wins a national championship with Florida. I mean, that to me is one of the takeaway lessons from this tournament, and it's not a new lesson, but it's a reminder of a lesson that I feel like has emerged in the last 5 or 10 years. Veteran guards win in March. I mean, it's really I don't. It's winning a national championship is not that simple, but I do think if you don't have veteran guards that you can hang your hat on, you're going to have a really tough time winning a national championship. I mean, for a while, 10 or 15 years ago, we had like the diaper dandy era, right? With Kentucky and Duke winning some national championships with the quote unquote diaper dandings, the McDonald's All-America freshmen. Well, that time has come and gone. And now the winning formula is getting these veteran guards, some of which maybe you've signed and developed, others maybe you let mid-majors take the first couple years of developing, and then you step in. I mean, really, Houston the same way. They had a veteran lineup, some prolific guards, weren't prolific in the national championship game, but did a lot to get them there. And Florida, 3 senior guards in the starting lineup, a transfer senior, and Walter Clayton played his final 2 years at Florida after starting his career at Iona. He's the star of the tournament. To me, that's sort of the lasting takeaway. You want to win it all, you better have some veteran guards who you can rely on in the clutch.
Well, I thought one thing that struck me too was coaching. We've talked and we've heard discussed on and on during this tournament. Rick Barnes getting to an Elite Eight with Tennessee back-to-back years. Kelvin Sampson, all the successes he and Barnes are both guys in their 70s, all the success they've had and haven't won a national title. And along comes Todd Golden, who's only, 39 years old. He's fairly new at this. And he goes into this. I mean, he builds this team, as you just mentioned. He builds his team, hasn't been at Florida like that long, builds the team, goes through the toughest conference in the country, wins the SEC tournament championship. That's supposed to be almost a stigma. Well, they exerted too much energy in going through that. Maybe they'd be better off losing early than being fresh for the NCAA. Does all that, and then he gets in the tournament and doesn't dominate like it did at times during the regular season or in the SEC tournament, has all these close games, and he wins them all. And he wins them after things looked dire for the Gators. Give him a lot of credit, what he did. And I thought last night in that second half, when his star players struggled throughout the game, I say he struggled. He couldn't get shots. It wasn't about him missing so much as he couldn't get shots, which was a tribute to Sampson's game plan, his scouting, and the way the way Houston executed. So then, I don't know, 13 minutes ago or whatever, he said he puts Clayton on the bench. And it was as though Houston, the whole game plan was designed to stop Clayton from getting shots. So now he's off the floor. And the offense actually flowed better with him off the court. So then they make a run. Then here comes Clayton again. And now he's back being superstar Clayton. Those 2 exotic drives he makes where he throws the ball up over his head and they both go in. He gets 3-point play, and then he hits a 3-pointer, and the Gators are off and running. I just thought that Golden's management there of that team and throughout the tournament was exemplary.
Yeah, I agree. I thought excellent coaching on his side. I thought Kelvin Sampson had some great coaching moments to help get
Yes.
Houston to that point, and really had a great game plan on Walter Clayton, as you were discussing there. I mean, they said they had to basically they came out with the approach of make someone else beat them, and for most of the game that worked. And really, I mean, Houston shot it very very poorly. Credit the Gators defense for having a big hand in that. But yeah, really, I thought both these coaches throughout the tournament did a pretty superb job of leading their teams to this point. John, overall for the tournament, I'm kind of grading the tournament. I would say just from an entertainment value, maybe kind of lower than usual marks in the first round. I mean, still some good games, but by the very lofty bar that had been set for the tournament in the first round the past few years. Kind of a mild year for upsets. First couple rounds, I should say, I thought were a little bit tame, but then we started to get some great games. Texas Tech with its second half rally to erase a huge deficit and win in overtime against Arkansas, only to have then Florida deliver that great rally against Texas Tech in the Elite Eight. Just some other great rallies from Florida mixed in there. Some great second half showings from Houston against Purdue and Duke to get to this point. It was almost as if the tournament got better as it went along. We thought that might happen by having fewer upsets early. That meant the best teams were still going to be around late. I thought the semifinal games were the best leg of the tournament. Auburn played great in the first half. Florida punched back in the second half, and then Houston, even though it results in a national runner-up finish, one of the most memorable games of the tournament will be Houston rallying past Duke. So I thought the semifinal stage was epic. Overall, John, the three games in San Antonio, when you combine the semifinals and the finals, the three games were decided by a combined margin of just 11 points. There was only one Final Four that was closer than that. And I'm wondering if you remember this Final Four. It was the 1982 Final Four. The combined margin of those three games was just 10 points. North Carolina beat Georgetown in the national championship that year. Houston and Louisville were the other teams in the Final Four. That was the year North Carolina had James Worthy, Sam Perkins, and a gentleman named Michael Jordan. That Final Four was played at the Superdome in New Orleans. Curious, John, did you cover that one? You got memories of that one?
Oh yeah, it was a great Final Four. One of the first few I covered, and it was in the Superdome. And these were all really good teams. You talk about this Final Four, but the other one was the same way. Houston was really good. Louisville, there were a lot of star players. And remember also, this is pre-3-pointer, pre-shot clock. So they were low-scoring games, but there was a lot of tension. And funny, but I remember Houston star guard Rob Williams. He could barely hit a shot. I thought about that with Walter Clayton last night. He had a horrible game. But yeah, it was so many good players, and of course, I guess we got a preview of what Michael Jordan was to become. He wasn't the Michael Jordan of greatness back then. He was a really good player and just starting out, but he got a pass in the corner and hit a clutch shot from the corner to win the game. But we didn't see the acrobatic Michael Jordan going to the basket. We saw Patrick Ewing with blocking shots and dominating the middle, and then Sam Perkins and James Worthy of North Carolina. Just a lot of great players in a very tight game. And you know what? I know this tournament's famous for upsets, but it's kind of like if I'm watching a movie or reading a book, I like to see it get better as it goes along. And maybe that's why I enjoyed this tournament so much. It got better, and I didn't have problems with that there weren't any huge upsets. I enjoyed this tournament more than I've enjoyed a tournament in quite a while. I really
Mm.
did. And I think the Final Four had a lot to do with that because you had star power. You had games that you had leads and lost leads and comebacks. So I really enjoyed this. Maybe I enjoyed it more than you did.
I don't know about that, John. I think just the first 4 days of the tournament is usually like my favorite 4 day stretch of the
Uh-huh.
sporting calendar. Normally, the first two rounds of the tournament, like they're sort of the highlight for me of the event, and seeing all the buzzer beaters and the overtime games and the upsets that we're normally accustomed to in the first two rounds of the tournament. And we just didn't have that this year. But really, my enjoyment of the tournament, I mean, I still was entertained the first two rounds. It just I didn't think they were as good as we've come to expect the last few years. But really, my entertainment was just delayed, and I thought that might happen. I overall I still found it to be a very captivating tournament. I just thought the best games were Elite Eight, Final Four type stage, whereas in other tournaments, sometimes what we remember most, other than who wins the thing, but individual games, sometimes we remember the first and second round games more. So it was more, I guess, just delayed entertainment this year. One thing I did really like, though, is that we had stars on the Final Four stage, and that is the danger of having the Cinderellas win early. Is you know I don't necessarily need all the number one seeds in the Final Four, John, but it is nice when you have some star power there, and we certainly had that this year when you had really what I believe were the three best players in the country, which were some ordering of Cooper Flagg, Walter Clayton, and Janiah Broome from Auburn. So you had the three best players in the country in the Final Four, and then you had Houston, which was more of an ensemble cast, but still they had some good star power on that team too. So it wasn't like you needed like sometimes it's like you got to look down at your roster and be like, all right, remind me who these guys are again. And you know the name on the front of the jersey, but you don't know the names on the back of the jersey after all these upsets happened. No, this year, you get to the Final Four and the stars were there. And I thought at different times, those stars delivered. For Janiah Broome, it was in the Elite Eight game against Michigan State. For Cooper Flagg, he was probably at his best in that Sweet 16 game against Arizona. I mean, he just had an awesome all-around game against Arizona. And then Walter Clayton, I mean, just time and time and time again, he was the story of this tournament. I actually wrote before the championship game tipped, John, that I thought there would be an argument to make Walter Clayton the tournament's most outstanding player, even if Florida didn't win, something that almost never happens in this tournament. I went into the history books, and you have to go back to 1983, the last time that happened, when Jim Valvano and North Carolina State won the tournament, but runner-up Houston had Hakeem Olajuwon win the tournament's most outstanding player award. Well, that argument became a moot point because Florida won the tournament, and Walter Clayton, without controversy, then won the most outstanding player. But yeah, I mean, for me, I guess I did miss a few upsets in the early rounds, but the Final Four was so good that it was like, okay, all is forgiven. I didn't need Cinderella in the end because the Final Four was so darn good.
I think one thing that adds so much drama to this event is in the end everybody loses but one team. We go from weekend to weekend. We go from first round to Sweet 16 to the Final Four, and there are all these joyful celebrations. And you, with each win, every team that wins a game is so excited, and they have reason to believe this is the start of something, even if it's our first round game. They win that game, and okay, we're ready. Here we go. But then in the end, it still ends with guys, the losing team. Look at Houston last night, just utterly devastated at defeat. After all it's done to get there, I mean, it won 5 games. It made an epic comeback against Duke, but in the end, no, it's can't even get a shot off on its last possession. And I think that's one of the enthralling aspects of this tournament is that only one team is going to make it, and you don't. It's hard to pinpoint that team. In the chair, go back to the semifinals, which were so gripping. It wouldn't have been surprising if Monday night we had been watching Duke and Auburn. I mean, you could see at point in the game Saturday, the way they were unfolding. I mean, Auburn had a lead. It was playing really well. Duke seemingly had a stranglehold. How could a team that good lose that big a lead? But it happened. But those teams, look, so you had a Final Four where you could really say, well, any one of those teams could have won the thing, and certainly Houston could have won it Monday night. And I mean, it looked like the better team for the most of that game.
You know what? I thought this March Madness disproved, John, and I don't know that we needed further proof, but we got it. To me, this idea that like, oh, the athletes getting paid and the athletes can transfer, college sports is ruined. It's just not what it used to be. And I wrote a column about this after the national championship game because, yeah, it is factually accurate to say college sports are not what they used to be. Well, neither is the stock market. And things change, right? Evolution occurs. College sports is not what it used to be. The athletes are getting paid now. They can transfer now. But I'm still failing to see how that is like ruining college sports. I mean, you just look at this Florida team, and you have Walter Clayton, who started his career, as I mentioned, as a 0-star recruit playing for Rick Pitino at Iona. He's from Florida. He'd considered Florida his dream school. That's where he wanted to play at a high school. Well, of course, Florida didn't want a 0-star recruit. So he goes the long road and goes to Iona, proves himself there. Iona goes in the NCAA tournament, transfers, comes back and plays for his home state school. And this former 0-star recruit becomes the most outstanding player of the NCAA tournament. How is the fact that he started his career at Iona and had to transfer ruining college sports? I just don't get that, John. And as I see these players Monday night, yes, they're getting paid. To me, it still looked like winning a national championship meant an awful lot to them. I mean, you look at the elation on the faces of those senior guards from Florida. I mean, that was joy. And then the agony of defeat. I mean, those Houston players, Emmanuel Sharp, LJ Cryer, on down the line. Those guys, Jawan Roberts, who's been in that program for 6 years, those guys look gutted. I mean, just absolutely gutted. And they didn't look to see like, oh, well, I got paid to be here, so who cares that I lost? I mean, I know I'm getting on a soapbox here, John, but you hear it too, like from all corners, like, oh, college sports, they're kind of ruined for me now. I don't know. If you didn't enjoy that Final Four, to me, that's, and I'm not saying you, John, personally, but the general sports fan, if you didn't enjoy that Final Four, to me, that's on you, right? Like, I mean, I thought that was just a greatly entertaining Final Four. The stars were there. The guys wanted so badly to win it. You could see it in the way they played. College sports are changing, but Marcus remains undefeated, remains awesome. It's unruined to me, even by all the evolutions in the sport.
And I think it's good when you get on your soapbox.
Okay. I'm glad you approve.
Yeah, I provide confirmation there. I think there is, you're right about the pay, and it is different. But one thing, I mean, once the game starts, I mean, it's just like once a Super Bowl starts. Are you thinking about how much the quarterbacks are making and how much the elite pass rusher is making and how much is a star receiver making, or how much is a backup guard who gets a start because the all-pro guy's hurt? You don't think about that once the game begins. I mean, sports is kind of a fantasy world. And if you carry that with you about what you don't like about the structure of the game and how it's changed and all that, then you lose sports. You really do. You lose the joy of sports. If you do that, you've got to be able to you got to be able to let that stuff go once the game begins, or really you're not going to enjoy it. But I think there was a lesson to be learned if you watched that celebration and also watched not just Florida's celebration, but what Houston was going through. That was agony. If you got empathy, any empathy at all, I mean, at that moment, I kind of wanted Florida to win because we have an SEC podcast. The Gators, they're one of our own. No, but I thought back to other Final Fours I'd covered with Houston in it, and they'd lost. And I thought about how hard that team played, and just my initial reaction, I'm glad Florida won, and then seconds later, I'm feeling sorry for Houston. But if you watch the emotion on both sides, as a player, not just as a fan, but as a player, and you see how much this means, I think players should hold a snapshot in their head, or a screenshot, I should say, I guess, of that moment, because whatever NIL deal they're getting now, and it may be substantial, but that money will be spent 20 years from now. It's gone. And you're looking back and you think how much money you made in college. Was that worth not winning a national title? I mean, what if you'd have made less money, but you'd have been on a team that won a national championship? The old saying, priceless. I think that applies, the value of that, and I'm not sure you can see it now. We see guys transferring for the most part for a better NIL deal. However, the value of winning a national championship's hard to put a dollar sign on. And 20 years later, what's going to mean more when you can bring back that memory? I think it's pretty valuable. And yeah, you want to make money and capitalize on your name, image, and likeness. But I think you'd like to have a championship too, because that's what you're going to be talking about 20 years from now. You're not going to be telling somebody about, I got $200,000 more for playing with School X than I did for playing with School Y.
And the beauty now is you can do both. You can make more money playing for Florida than you did for Arizona, and you can win a national championship.
Sure.
And do the Gator chomp afterwards. So yeah, that's the beauty now. You can make money and celebrate national championships while you're doing it. So all right, thanks for indulging my soapbox, John. But I want to get to the other topic I teased in the intro of, I think the reality of the two big college sports, college football and college basketball, is college football, to me, has the best regular season, not only in all of college sports, but all of sports. And I think there was a concern, and you've written about this, John, there was a concern that expanding the playoff might dilute the college football season just a little bit. Well, that didn't happen this year. I mean, I think we both agree. I think most college football fans agree that this past college football season was on another level from even what we've come to expect, which is a pretty high bar. But this college football season, I mean, there were twists and turns around every corner. September, October, November, they just kept coming. And the fact that the playoff expanded from 4 to 12 teams made the regular season even more relevant. It brought in games like Florida beating Ole Miss. Well, that would have been, would have been an interesting result, but it wouldn't have had playoff implications if you only had a 4-team playoff. Well, this time around, it did have playoff implications. Oklahoma beating Alabama, Vanderbilt beating Alabama. Games like that had huge playoff implications, knocked Alabama out of the playoff. Whereas they would have already been out of the playoff in the 4-team variety. So the regular season of college football, even with the playoff expanding, the regular season got better. But did the playoff get that much better? John, I'm starting to think that, there's really no magic solution to the college football's postseason. Making it bigger, I guess it made it a little better. I mean, I thought the 12-team playoff was better than the 4-team, but it's not like it created March Madness event. We could go to 6 teams if you want. I think that's going to have a lot of first-round blowouts too. I mean, the 1 seed's gonna smack the 16 seed. The 2's probably gonna do the same to 15. Like, I just think there's only so much you can do, I think, in college football. And I wonder if it's now to the point where I'm just at this stage of acceptance where it's like, do whatever we can to make the regular season as incredible as possible and just come what may in the postseason and accept the reality that, like, it's not going to be the most epic postseason in sports because college football is so different than college basketball. It's harder for the underdogs to win. Particularly when you're playing the very best teams. There's no equalizer like the three-pointer. So whatever we can do to make the regular season awesome, let's do that and just and just tolerate whatever the postseason is. Maybe that's expanding the playoff to 16 teams, getting a few more teams into the playoff mix. I don't know what that is, but to me, if you could provide me a solution that would make the regular season even better, if that's possible, I think I'd settle for that because I've come to accept that the playoff probably just is what it is. It's not going to be as good as March Madness. It's not going to be as good as the college football regular season.
I can remember covering Super Bowls in the late 80s and through the 90s. And there was a long run where the NFC was just substantially better than the AFC. And you would have one blowout after another. My gosh, watching Dallas beat Buffalo seems like 1,000,000 points out in LA one year. It is all the Super Bowls went that way. This is supposed to be the biggest event in sports, and it was so often anticlimactic compared to the buildup, and it wasn't in sync with those Roman numerals that supposedly made it so majestic and so important. I think a part of it too, Blake, is the fact the human condition maybe in basketball. We saw Walter Clayton not score a point. One of the best players in basketball, one of the best players, maybe the best player, I would say, in this tournament. He went all 3/4 of the game without a point. You just don't see a quarterback, a best quarterback suddenly can't complete a pass in football. I know their performance levels range, but a running back doesn't suddenly become slow in a game, and he can't make a play, or it's just so different. The nature of it, performance levels vary so significantly from one game to the next. And look in the SEC this year, where Florida beat Tennessee 30 points in Gainesville, and Tennessee wins by 20 in Knoxville. That would not happen in football. It would be almost unbelievable to even think of that, but I guess it could, but it'd be very remote. So I think a lot of it's just the nature of those games.
Yeah, the other advantage I think March Madness has, John, particularly in the early rounds, you think about the first round, they play 4 games that tip off relatively at the same time. Like you have 16 games each of the first 2 days, and they're in like 4-game blocks. And so what I did, and what a lot of people do, is I had 4 TVs going in my living room. So it's like, okay, the game on TV 2 stinks, but the game over here on TV 3 and TV 4 is good, and TV 1, we're getting ready to tip off with the game there. You don't have that in the college football playoff. Even with more games now, they set it up to where you're not having 2 games happen at the same time. Whereas the regular season in college football, you got games on every channel imaginable. One game's a blowout, that's fine. You flip to another one, and you might have it good. And so I think college football is at a little bit of a disadvantage there too, is that you only have, they want to get the best ratings possible. They want to have football all day. And so you only have 1 game per time window. And if that game's a blowout, well, sorry, you're stuck for hours. I mean, because we know how long football games last, right? You're stuck for 3 hours until 3-4 hours until the next one kicks off. Whereas in basketball, even into the Sweet 16, you got 2 games going on at once. You only need 1 out of 2 to be a good game, to be entertained. Football just doesn't have that in the postseason. They're playing 1 game per time window. I don't know that I'm advocating for that. I mean, that would drive some people mad, having 2 postseason games going on at once. But I do think that's a huge advantage for March Madness is you have so many games going on at the same time. You're bound to have at least one of them that's going on in that window be a good game. Football doesn't have that. You got a 4-hour time block per game, and in the postseason, if the game stinks, you're stuck with it.
Well, see, that gets back to our electronic era too, though. We're conditioned now. We have a shorter attention span. That's just a fact. We're conditioned to seeing, oh, this game's out of hand. I'm moving over to this other game. And see, then that works in the college regular season because I might not have 4 TV. Well, I have 4 TVs, but they're not in the same room. So so what I will do is I'll have one game on TV and I'm watching a game on my laptop or even my cell phone.
You don't just wander from room to room, John. You could do that. Get all 4 going and just kind of wander throughout the house.
Thankfully, my house is too big for that. It would,
ooh,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like I'm going 10 feet. So, no, I think you're right about that. And we're just so you can, and that's the appeal of those earlier tournament games. And even as you go through the playoffs in football, it just doesn't seem to be the same build-up. The way it leads to a championship, because on the last weekend, you can't have 2 semifinal football games and then the winners meet 2 days later for the championship. I mean, I think that's a part of this Final Four thing because you're all right there together. And so you go into the weekend, you go into the Super Bowl weekend, you just got one game and the build-up's been 2 weeks long. Think of all the action you can see in 2 weeks of an NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that's so true, John. I'm glad you pointed that out and that's another thing that makes the regular season of football so great is on Saturdays, you got games from 11 a.m. Central Time until what, about 1, 2 a.m.?
You can go to 2. Usually my day is, is noon Eastern to close to 2 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning.
In basketball, you can do that, 12 hours of basketball in the tournament 4 days straight, and then do it, the next week, 4 days in a row again. And yeah, it's rinse, repeat. You have the semifinals, 2 days later, you have the championship. You can't do it in football. And I think that's what makes the pacing of it difficult. In football is you have a day of action, and then you got to wait a week until the next round occurs. I think that's okay in the regular season because everything's planned around Saturday. In the postseason, you're playing on these random days, trying to fit in between the NFL playoffs. It is just, there's so many factors, I think, going against the college football postseason that basketball has going for it that it's just impossible to replicate in college football versus regular season is perfect in college football. You don't need, there's nothing to fix. I mean, maybe there's little tweaks you can do to make it a little better. Throwing out one of these cupcake games that teams play and insert it with another real opponent. There's little tweaks, but it's more fine tuning. And I think what I'm coming to here is just an acceptance of college football's regular season will always be better than its postseason, and college basketball's postseason will always be better than its regular season. And there's only so much you can do to change that. These are problems that you can't totally fix, I don't think.
Yeah, and as they say, basketball is a game of runs, and we're programmed for that. So in the early stages of a game, when it's 13-1 or 15-2, we aren't assured of a rout and a runaway and a blowout and a game that's over at halftime because it's a game of runs. And in football, if it's 21-0 in the first 10 minutes of the game, you don't see a lot of comebacks from that. And so you can sustain more hope in basketball. We just talked about all of Florida's comebacks in the tournament. I mean, in football, if you think of it in football, the context of football, wouldn't you say Florida was more than a touchdown down against UConn Auburn, and then
Yeah, and even
Texas Tech.
even in the national championship
Yeah, all
Monday
those
against
games.
Houston. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so even though and when in football, when one team looks that dominant early, it
Mm.
kinda kills the suspense because it doesn't usually turn around and all of a sudden, "Oh, that was a just kind of a fluke. Here comes uh, the other team's run." It just doesn't play that way. So I think the suspense is so much easier to sustain in basketball. And you talk about it from the start of the tournament to the very last seconds of the tournament, or you can talk about it from the start of each game to the final whistle, the final horn, or whatever you want to call it.
All right, a lot more football to discuss in the coming weeks, John, on the pod, but I've enjoyed the basketball talk we've had the last month, particularly with how good the SEC was this season, an SEC team winning it. Let's close with this final thoughts. Lasting thought, lasting memory you're going to have from this tournament. When someone asks you 3 years from now, what do you remember about the 2025 tournament? What's going to come to mind? And I realize it might just be blankness, John.
Yeah.
Maybe you remember nothing, but wishful thinking. What are you going to remember when someone asks you 3 years from now about this tournament?
I'm going to remember Walter Clayton for all those dramatic moments. In particular, if there were one play, my memory were confined to one play, it would be that first drive late in the game against Houston when he goes to the basket, throws the ball up over his head and draws a foul, hits the floor, makes the free throw. It's a 3-point play. And right there, I thought, here he comes, and here come the Gators. I thought that was a turning point, even though Florida's momentum had already been building. When that happened, it was kind of like, oh yeah, this is Gator basketball, and good luck, Houston, because we've seen it before and we're getting ready to see it again. But it was such an acrobatic shot on its own merits at any time of a game, but to be in the clutch when you played, struggled so to make baskets all game, to make that basket, that's how I'll remember the tournament.
Yeah, mine's going to be very similar, John. I think Walter Clayton would be my 2-word summary. If I could expand it, if I could expand it a little further, I will remember one play more than any other as well. And I was wondering if you would go with this one. Yours is a good one. Mine's a little bit of a different direction. I'm going to remember not from the championship game, the Elite Eight game, where he could have tied the game with a minute to go against Texas Tech with a 5-foot little floater, and says, no, I'm headed back here to 24 feet away from the 3-point line, drains the three with a minute to go. And that was all she wrote for Texas Tech from that point. So I know it wasn't the championship game, but if you ask me 5 years from now, what I remember from the 2025 tournament, I'll say Walter Clayton and him stepping back, hitting that three against Texas Tech. And to me, it was almost like, now knowing that Florida won the title, it's like they won the title on that bucket right there. I know there was a lot of things that had to happen after that, but that was the bucket where Florida won the national championship.
I think it was a moment, and I'm glad you brought that up because I remember that too. And it was almost as though it was a reminder of sorts, and he was enlightening the competition to say, I'm the star of the show,
Yeah.
and you guys are just props. So I'm going to eschew this 2-pointer and go back out here. He just made it look natural and made it look easy. So yeah, that's a really good point. Good memory.
All right. Well, we'll try to stay the stars of this show in the weeks to come. We're going to double down on football talk here now that we're the basketball's behind us. But we appreciate you indulging us on the hoops talk. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for listening to this edition of SEC Football Unfiltered.